Hello and welcome back. We're talking about Descartes, the last meditation. We talked about all the previous ones previously, so if you are interested, go back and listen to the previous episodes. In this last meditation, in the sixth meditation, Descartes talks about the relationship between mind and body, and he tries, of course, first to establish the priority of the mind. We can only have true knowledge through our brains, but we also have God who makes sure that we are not being deceived. So this is what he established in the previous meditations. And he says in the beginning, when I am not a philosophical observer, but in my everyday experience, I feel that my senses are reliable. I can touch things, I can see things, and I feel that my senses tell me the truth. But then I make experiences that let me doubt whether my senses actually tell me the truth. He writes, but afterwards, many experiences little by little destroyed all the faith which I had rested in my senses. For I, from time to time, observed that those towers which from afar appear to me to be round, more closely observed seem square, and that colossal statues raised on the summit on these towers appeared as quite tiny statues when viewed from the bottom. And so, in an infinity of other cases, I found error in judgments founded on these external senses. And it's not only these things, he gives more examples. The sun, which is very big, when seen from the earth, it appears very small. So we have all sorts of wrong conceptions about things based on our senses, particularly, perspective, or the fact that we cannot look behind things. We tend to assume that things go on as we see them on the other side, but this is not necessarily true. I'm just looking at a camera, which is a highly irregular object. If I assumed that on the back it has another lens like it looks to me from the front, I would be totally mistaken, right? So our senses cannot really give us a full picture of the world, and we need the mind in order to get true knowledge about the world. But then when I look at the mind and I look at the world of physical bodies, I discover that they have different properties, that they feel different, and Descartes will say that they are different substances. And how do I know this? Because the mind is thinking. We established this already, right? I am a thinking thing, so the mind is thinking. But the body is not thinking. The body has extension. The body has weight. Everything that is material, like this remote control here, has an extension. It has a length, it has a width, it has a weight. And my thoughts don't have this. My thoughts don't have extension or width or weight to them. And so Descartes writes, this part is here, I have a clear and distinct idea of myself inasmuch as I am only a thinking and unextended thing, and as on the other I possess a distinct idea of body inasmuch as it is only an extended and unthinking thing. It is certain that this I is entirely and absolutely distinct from my body and can exist without it. So, the I is unextended and thinking, while my body is extended and not thinking. All other bodies here means just material things, are extended and not thinking. And because they have these exclusive properties, we can know that they are really totally different things. They are not related. They cannot be the same thing. They have to be totally different substances. And of course, that last sentence can exist without it. Again, this is religiously motivated. Descartes has to say this. He has to insist that the soul can exist without the body. Otherwise, he would be committing a heresy, right? In a Christian environment. And we cannot forget that Descartes comes directly from the Middle Ages, right? He was raised by Jesuits right at the end of the Middle Ages. So his whole world in which he lives is not yet a modern world dictated by science and physics and so on. There was science, there was a beginning of science in his time, but the larger world was still mostly intellectually and in terms of religion, medieval world. And so Descartes cannot get rid of the soul, right? We need the soul. We need to make mistakes, like you said in the previous meditation, we need to attribute our mistakes to ourselves, not to God. We need to be able to sin. We need to be able to have freedom. And our soul needs to be independent of our body, because our body will die, but our soul has to go on and continue to the next life. And later, in the second coming of Christ and so on, be resurrected. So all these things are necessary in his world because he needs to still stay compatible with Christian doctrine. But now something happens. It is not only that the soul is totally independent of the body. This is not our experience as human beings. We have the experience that when the body is damaged, for example, our soul takes notice. When I have a pain somewhere, I am sad. Or when I am drunk, then my soul does not seem to work anymore, right? My mind does not seem to work correctly. When I take a drug, my mind does not work correctly. When I am sleeping, my mind does not work correctly. So there is a kind of interaction between the soul and the body that goes both ways. It's not only the soul controlling the body, but it's also the body acting back on the soul. And Descartes acknowledges this, and he describes this. He writes, "Therefore, just because I know certainly that I exist, and that I am a thinking thing, I rightly conclude that my essence consists solely in the fact that I am a thinking thing. And although possibly, as I shall say in a moment, I possess a body with which I am very intimately conjoined, yet because on the one side I have a clear and distinct idea of myself as a thinking and unextended thing, and on the other I possess a distinct idea of body that is extended and unthinking, it is certain that this I is entirely and absolutely distinct from my body. It can exist without it." But also he says, it is more complicated when I see how my body interacts with my mind, because, and he has some understanding of how the nervous system works at this point. He says, I perceive things in my brain, although when I have a damage in my foot, I feel the pain in the foot, but in reality, my brain is where I feel the pain. It's not my foot. So the impression of pain goes through my nerves, through my legs, into my brain, and my brain projects the pain back into my foot. So this shows us that the brain is not really just recording things and not just giving us the direct impression, but it gives us a processed image of what happens, in which the brain locates the pain in different parts of the body. And so in principle, this can also go wrong, right? If I intercept the nerve and I excite this nerve that gives me pain in the foot somewhere on the way between the foot and my brain, let's say I intercept it in my back somewhere in my spine, then I might perceive a pain in my foot, although there is no such pain in the foot. So we can be mistaken about it. Again, we have to mistrust our senses, and things can go wrong, and we never know exactly how our bodies work. And we should also remember that Descartes has this metaphor of the helmsman. He said, the mind is not stuck in the body like a helmsman in the ship. This is not true, because this would be misrepresenting the relationship between mind and body, because the helmsman in the ship is controlling only one way. He steers the ship, and then the ship goes where the helmsman says. But if the ship, let's say, collides with a reef or something, then the helmsman will not be injured. The ship will be injured, but the helmsman will not perceive the injury. The ship is not part of the helmsman. While we are inside our bodies, our mind is inside our bodies, but is connected much more intimately with the body, so that the damage to the body affects the mind also. And the mind and the body are connected, and he says this in a different work. He does not say it in the meditations. He says it in a work about anatomy. And there he says that the mind and the body are connected through the pineal gland, which is a very freely moving gland. You can imagine like a joystick that can be moved by the spirit, by the soul, like a sail on a ship. And the soul, although it's immaterial, can move the pineal gland because the pineal gland is so easily movable. And then the pineal gland, like a joystick, moves my body around. And so this is the interface, the pineal gland, between the mind and the body. And of course, this thought does not really work very well. And many others have made fun of this. And we will see later Spinoza himself said that it would be unbelievable, this thing, if not such a great as Descartes had said it. So obviously he's making fun of Descartes because of the idea of the pineal gland. And if you're interested in this, I have a series of other videos. So these here are my lectures, but I also have a series of live videos where we read Descartes, and these are on my other channel, Daily Philosophy, so you can go there. I will put a link below. And there we actually read every Monday, every Sunday or Monday, depending on where you are. In the United States, it's more Sunday night. In Hong Kong, where I am, or in Australia, it would be Monday morning. And there we read actually the words of Descartes, and you can go now to the channel and see all these past recordings where we go through the text little by little and talk about it. So, thank you and see you in the next one.